Hello, happy August, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Happy Monday, everyone. Happy August. It is August 1st. Boy, oh boy. I think it might be, a good idea for everybody to take a deep, diaphragmatic breath right now. Just in case you haven't been doing that constantly already. So, welcome to the Starseed Ministry. It is August 1st of 2022. Welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, welcome. Thank you for stopping by, being part of this Starseed Ministry this morning. Hello to the Starseed Fellowship and those who are part of the Catalyst Classroom. Got some new subscribers over the weekend. Had an incredible live stream event yesterday with my good friend Kiana of Aurora Creative Healing, all about the Lion's Gate and the Sirius Rising. And it really was nothing short of a profoundly powerful healing activation for everyone involved, including myself and Kiana. So the replay is available on whatever platform you're watching this on. If you're interested in checking that out, if you haven't already, and just know that it is a timeless type of information and transmission, right? I talk about the astrology of Sirius Rising and the Lion's Gate, and Kiana brought forward a number of just really beautiful light language transmissions and channeling. So that's something that you can return to as we approach that time, which is really at the end of this week through the weekend. Friday is the 5th of August, and that's the time of the heliacal rising of the star Sirius in the dawn sky, and then 8/8 as the midpoint of the sun through the sign of Leo is really walking through that gateway. So what I'd like to offer today actually is something that I didn't really get a chance to go into in more detail with the Let's Get Serious live stream about the Lion's Gate, which is to kind of look at the astrology from the Lion's Gate up to the spring equinox. And as I was preparing for the astrology of today and just kind of checking in with some overlaps in the past and the future, I feel like it's definitely important to cover this time period, and right now seems like a very good time. So we know that today is August 1st, and I've been talking about this for months now, that this triple conjunction of Mars and Uranus and the north node of the moon, all happening today, basically started yesterday and will find its resolution or full conjunction by the end of today. And if there was ever a cleansing of the palette, this certainly would be it. And the Mars element, well, the cleansing of the palette is a very Uranus-triggered type of experience, of course, because it's something that is unexpected, but yet clears away all of what had come before. And Mars in this equation right now is like, if you've ever, it's like wasabi. Wasabi as a palate cleanser. Mars seems to be the element of that. And anybody that has had wasabi, likes wasabi, understands what it does, then I think this analogy might fit really well for how important it is to, as I said yesterday, to squeegee that third eye and to cleanse your palate of your own consciousness in order for something new and fresh to come forward. And I've been really feeling this new, fresh energy. So I'm actually want to change it up a little bit today for our Starseed Ministry and kind of do things in a different order, because I want to look at the astrology leading up to the equinox, and surely most of August, and the entirety of August. But there are some things that are overlapping right now that were something that I brought up actually at the time, which was at the spring equinox. There's some astrology that's relevant to right now, which I think is very interesting, and just some interesting little pieces to put together if we choose, and what's going to be transpiring at the equinox. And so this time period feels really, really important for what what is coming through that's fresh and new, and the means in which we allow that to happen, the experiences that we're having that allow us to grow out of our safe space and container, which truly is what's happening right now, and how much the Sirius rising and even the Lion's Gate is an energetic opportunity on a seasonal cycle, but it's different this year. There's so much more at play, especially this triple conjunction in Taurus with the North Node. I think this is a palate cleanser like no else. So knowing where Taurus is, especially 19 degrees Taurus is in your chart, is going to show you the area of life that this type of event may transpire for you. So that's something actually that can be covered in the reading sale that's going along with this offering. I'm going to just show you the flyer real quick. It's been sent out to the email list, of course. It's also been sent out through social media as well. I brought some attention to it yesterday on the live stream, but the Lion's Gate, or Through the Eye of the Needle, personal astrological forecast from the Lion's Gate to the equinox is a 60-minute reading, which is a recording for $66. So you can go to my website, linked in the description box, if you're interested in that, or you can just go to the website to get more information if you're new here and you're like, what is this all about? So, and you can get a sense of what this work really entails and what the possibilities are. And you can find that if you go through the testimonials and reviews, as is the case with any small business. Word of mouth is probably your most valuable marketing asset. So, my friends, let's go back to this place here. So I'm going to check in with the chat here. Emily says, hey friend, this morning has already been emotional and testing for me, but light has brought something to my attention. Just like you said in my reading, discernment is necessary right now. Oh boy, oh boy. That is, we have a Virgo moon right now, so I'm glad you brought up that that concept of discernment, and I'm going to bring this up in a larger context with the reading. But Virgo, this is where the rubber meets the road in terms of your own inner discernment and how important it is, especially to Aquarius people right now. Emily says, I got a big mouthful of wasabi this morning. Exactly. Oh, gosh. I don't relish that in terms of your experience, especially if you don't know what's wasabi. You're getting a big pile of wasabi. If you've ever seen that, I'm sure there are countless TikToks, people being pranked for that very reason. So it's not a very pleasant experience and can really burn, right? It can really burn. But boy, oh boy, it is clearing some shit away. So I'm glad that you had the foresight to look at your chart and for us to explore it together, so that you understood, like, oh, here are those challenges that are coming up where the discernment is necessary. So thank you for sharing that. So I want to go into... Well, first, let's just check in real quick with some space weather, right? Real quick. Not a whole lot of going on. We're getting a solar breeze, I guess, as it were. That was how it was described this morning on Suspicious Observers. And I tend to feel that's kind of how it's been, a solar breeze, right? A little bit of upheaval in terms of the impact of the solar weather, but nothing that is like super scary. But breakthroughs all weekend, right? It was just amazing and also kind of unsettling in some ways to just hold space or just be an observer, either within ourselves or people in our lives, or just in general breakthroughs happening, right? Just like we're looking at this long duration flare that came off the sun yesterday. It was facing away from us, so it's not likely we're going to get any impact CME wise. But look, I mean, it was just like roiling and spinning around and just like getting all activated, and then poof, right? It felt like a lot of this has been happening this weekend. And sometimes it, again, like the wasabi, it can really burn. It can be very sudden. And with Uranus involved in this conversation today, especially right now, it's often unexpected and very disruptive to one's own conscious awareness, right? It's like flipping a switch, and you go from a 120 to 240 watt capacity at once, right? And all of a sudden, if you don't have the framework for that, if you know anything about electricity at all, if you don't have the capacity to hold the larger ampage, then you are going to fry yourself. And that may be happening, but again, it's kind of part of the process right now. And as we look at the astrology, we look at the actual tools here that can assist us in utilizing these experiences and this energy for our growth, and accepting the fact that you have to come out of the womb eventually. And the transition from Cancer to Leo in the astrology or in the zodiac is very much about that. And in fact, a new moon that we just had on the 28th is setting the stage for us to be able to confront those two aspects of ourselves, right? Where we've been and where we're going, right? What is more conservative and consolidated, right? The shell of the crab, the womb of the child coming into the world, right? The root system that allows the flower to bloom, right? And this is, I think, so important to get our heads wrapped around in a lot of ways. And it doesn't mean that there aren't really intense struggles emotionally, mentally, financially, right? People are being really pushed to their limit in a lot of ways right now. And the breakthroughs around that have been incredible. And just imagine when there's all of this magnetic like tangling with the sun, right, which is where these flares really come from, because the energy keeps building and building and building behind it, and then eventually it finds either it opens a hole, right, those coronal holes, or it flares like this. And so there's a lot of this going around, so don't be surprised if it continues to be part of your experience. But this is why the inundation of the floodwaters that the Sirius rising, or the heliacal rising of Sirius, represents is about, letting go of all of the baggage to allow in the full stream of our soul, and be able to hold that intensity, because this is how we're able to receive this solar energy without burning ourselves out. And it's intense, right? Feels are feels, and whether they find release in joy or in incredible grief, it's still potent no matter what. And so to honor that for yourself as well. It's okay to have these incredible releases of emotion that are grieving or even anger in a lot of ways, as long as you have a way to channel it as opposed to identify with it, right? So, and you see, the sun is just along for the ride. We're all together in this experience. And again, we should be expecting an uptick in this type of flare activity now by the end of, now, basically, as we get into August, into September. So the other thing I wanted to share real quick, just our coronal hole is pretty much facing us right now. So there's that solar breeze coming in, that solar wind that is being, essentially fast-tracked through this coronal hole to us. And so again, it'll make that disturbance that much more, palpable to us. And so to be aware of those influences, and the magnetic field, or the feminine principle, really the Venusian feminine principle of the magnetism, is how we're able to really interact the most proficiently with the sun, right? I mean, if you're going to harness solar energy for power, you better have the capacity magnetically to handle what that means. And I have a feeling, considering that there are so many Atlantean themes overlapping right now, as we're going to go into, that maybe that's bad timing of really attempting to harness this intensity of solar energy without the magnetic field to compensate, to be the receiver of this energy. And if you're heart is losing in its magnetism, or the field around your heart is contracting because your connections to each other are, they are being impacted in some way, or you're starting to close off, right? You're starting to harden, become isolated, or not trusting people, right? These are all these darker Cancerian themes. Without that magnetic resonance from our heart through love and connection, we can't maintain these incredible upgrades that are coming, and they come through the sun very cyclically. So you can see the overlaps here, and knowing what's happening at this level, I feel like, is also how we know and track what's going on with us globally, with us individually, spiritually, materially, the whole thing. So this is today's astrology, and We've talked about this. Here is this conjunction, this triple conjunction. So Uranus and the North Node were exact in conjunction yesterday. So Mars is now meeting the pack and is going to be meeting each of them in turn in their exact. But they're pretty much all exactly conjunct. And this is the wasabi, right? So without belaboring this conjunction, since we've been talking about it forever, this is pretty much exact today. And this is how we're really starting the month of August. We had that new moon just days ago. Gosh, it was only a couple days ago, but it feels like a lifetime ago for some reason. The other things going on today that are pretty substantial, I talked about this at length in the transmission, the Sirius rising and the Lionsgate transmission, is this trine between the sun and Jupiter now in its retrograde, just to it was such a beautiful energy yesterday of togetherness, but also sovereign authentic expression via each one of us coming together and really blowing. It was like a glass blower, right? That is shaping this beautiful bubble, right? This large and just expansive, almost sense of self, right? And as Jupiter now goes into its retraction and its retrograde, it may distort the image that we had of ourselves in this moment. It may be harder to see it. It may be harder to find ourselves identified with it, because it's gonna, when a balloon deflates, and whatever you had on there is going to be distorted. It's not going to look the same. But this is also our opportunity to really do this work on the inner realms. And at the 8-8, as I talked about in that transmission, it's going to be the sun and Chiron together. So I really would encourage you to catch those pieces for those particular astrological alignments, because I went very deeply into them and how they're part of our healing. The other thing I want to point out for today is that Lilith, again, back into conjunction with Procyon, back into opposition to Pluto. So we're coming back to these themes again about what it means to be secure, to feel safe, to have the capacity to face the karmic, upheaval of society by being able to retreat back into the very canyons of your own life, basically, and not in a negative way, but as the storm sweeps through the canyon, right? I mean, you're gonna have collateral damage if you've expanded outside of those areas. Did you ever notice how the the Anasazi and even the Hopi, right, in the American Southwest had, they built their structures into the canyons, into the very living rock, and there was a protection from the elements. And it's kind of the same thing here, but with Lilith, as we've talked about in the Catalyst Classroom all last month, was basically when we feel disempowered or frustrated because we can't access the power that Lilith represents as the vessel of the sacred feminine to hold the flame of transmutation, of creation, right? It's primal, and if we feel disconnected from it or cut off in some way, we will overcompensate by going even deeper, or we will find opposition and identify with the opposition as a means to kind of bypass the feeling of the void. But the void is necessary within each of us, right? again, the opposition with Pluto, this theme continues to come around and activate us in terms of the larger institutional destructive experience that Pluto and Capricorn is providing right now, and it's in its retrograde, so it's really just all the demons being released, all of the finding the asbestos in the foundation, you know what I mean, getting at what is rotting under the surface, and that is also within ourselves as well. Incredible amount of power is released, and it's what we do with that power. And when we feel cut off from a feeling of safety, security, belonging, trust, loyalty, which can happen here with Lilith in these areas of late Cancer, we very much can harness that power as a means to reestablish a sense of power for ourselves without actually doing the work of real transmutation, transfiguration, right? Where we actually face the cycle of death and rebirth directly and head on and stare into the abyss of ourselves in order to reestablish a deeper place of connection. So those who have had starseed readings with me recently and know about the Procyon or Procyon connections in your chart, I mean, it's been ongoing with Pluto in this position, but every time Lilith has passed over this point in the last month, it has brought it out, and soon Venus is going to be here. And we just talked about this Venusian quality, about the magnetics, and in Cancer, it's really about the capacity to have an impact on the waters of the soul. And we know that there is, maybe it's at this point, it's established that it's about gravity, right? The lunar relationship to the tides of the planet is based on gravity, based on the position of the moon, whether it be in an apogee or a perigee. And remember, this is the apogee. This is the furthest from the moon where Black Moon Lilith is. And so Venus is going to be at the lunar apogee when it crosses basically this point very soon. I find that interesting. Like, there's more of a magnetic resonance that is going to be maybe further from us, but something we can still tap into in our own sense of value, our bodies, through our relationships, through anything that materially gives us comfort and security, and in a very materially palpable way, right? That's what Venus allows for. But the magnetics is to hold the waters in a lot of ways, right? And to also provide the replenishment and the sustenance and the nourishment for the growing life. And Venus, I mean, for everything that Venus can represent, I mean, truly, she values life. I mean, she is the living soil. So she is, in fact, the medium of our material growth. And so it's important, I think, to at least track Venus and understand where she is. And in Cancer, it's just been, I don't know. It's just, I think the feels have been more intense. There's been a lot more relationship with, those in our life who mean the most to us, in our families and our inner value, perhaps the waters of our own inner and private life, and our core power has become something that we have engaged with in a very material way, through our bodies or through the things that are valuable to us. There's a lot of ways, but also to know that she is in a sextile to this whole palate cleansing experience over here in Taurus, right? The sign that she rules. So there is a relationship here of when we take care of what's right in front of us and attend to the responsibilities of what we're actually attempting to grow within our lives. I think that is something that can that connection here to a space that's being created as a result of your squeegeeing or palate cleansing. It's like, take care of what's right in front of you. Actually nourish and take care of what you want to grow that's right in front. And that could be something that is so seemingly minuscule, but it means everything because it's about the experience. And this is where you start getting into the process of imbuing everything you do with a sense of sacredness. And that really has an impact on the way that you may move forward with new potential and basically a cleansed palette again. So that's really powerful, and that's happening in today into tomorrow as well. So boy, August 1st. I really would like to look at more of the lunar cycle moving through the rest of August. And the 5th and the Sirius rising, as I talked about in the transmission, was where we're going to get this third quarter moon here. Let me just focus on getting the... There we go. I want to focus on getting the actual chart up for you. So, here we go. Because we're going to have a return back to the south node with the moon in Scorpio, and this is the day of the Sirius rising, the heliacal rising. So it'll rise at like 5:55 Eastern Standard Time, and the sun will come up like, you know, a couple moments later in terms of its technical rising. So why this is important is, you know, we look at this moon here in Scorpio with the sun in a square, and it's in a T-square, again, to where this is at. And this first quarter moon, as I've talked about endlessly, is always this reorientation of like, okay, what are we doing? We had this new moon where we really asserted a sense of facing the relativity of the past and the future, right? That the human experience as a whole and as a distinct voice and expression of God's source, divinity, sacredness, the universe, coming through your creativity is, it's through some sort of social crisis often that we kind of face the relativity of where we've been and where we're going, right? This past and future thing. So, and something that I'm going to bring up in more detail is, especially for Gemini and Virgo folks, right? We're really going to track Mercury right now because of where Mercury currently is right now, which is at 26 degrees Leo, and that is the galactic degree for Atlantis, right? And so that's happening today. And so we're also going to have a third quarter moon at that degree. And so there are themes that are very related to the Gemini Virgo people, especially Virgo right now, because the moon's still in your sign. Right now, that your ruling planet of Mercury is giving you mental access to this idea of the divine connection or the covenant between you and your higher self. And it comes through being able to weather a storm in some ways. And so for the Virgo, it'll be more analytical and certainly organizational and really in, okay, what am I doing with this information? As opposed to the Gemini person is going to have kind of an opening, I feel like, in their own consciousness about like the mental conceptualization of, oh, I can identify through probably some sort of clairsentience, right? To identify, oh, this is about coming out of the storm and establishing that contact with my divine self in that moment and being able to really start to experience and enjoy in a lot of ways the illumination of that coming out of the storm. And so this is where Mercury is right now. And the reason I bring that up is because this is going to be our third quarter moon, meaning that the moon will be in conjunction with the Pleiades at the same degree. So before we get there though, here is this third quarter moon in Scorpio conjunct the South Node. It's going to be one of those moments, and I talked about this yesterday, where what do we, you know, where is our energy really being directed right now? And so the sun in Leo is very powerful, right? It is all about us at the center of our experience when the sun is in Leo. And you can see that Lilith is now in Leo as well by this point. This is on Friday the 5th with the Sirius rising. We also see that Venus is starting to come into conjunction with Procyon or Procyon at this point too. And through the weekend, we'll reach that point and be in opposition to Pluto. So as this portal opens, as the floodgates open for inundation, the moon in Scorpio, right? This is where we're going to really tap into within our fields the beginning of this inundation. And it will really inspire, I think, or drive many of us to establish a wider sense of connection, maybe establish new modes of communication, right? New connections with those that we are involved with. But it's going to be meeting the South Node at this point, which again is going to be really no match for what's going on opposite of it with Uranus and Mars. And so it's like allowing the rather than well, it feels to me that it's going to be very easy to kind of revert back to the previous ways in which we had received information, how we had set out new lines of communication with those that we're involved with and producing with that will allow for, for the branching off, right? This is where true empowerment comes from, is like a mycelial growth, or looking to put in new telephone lines, if you want to use the Sabian symbol. And where we've been collectively with the South Node in Scorpio, in terms of really being able to channel something, to transmit some transcendental knowledge, because it is in this space that we can create a direct link to that which is only available in the depth of our own journey within, right? Or into the abyss of the power dynamics, into the truth and the structural foundation of where our power is coming from. So it's not to say that there is no value to the ability to do this. It's important to recognize that we can propel ourselves towards our own future and our evolution, all kind of wrapped up together with Mars. Now, Mars wants to be in Scorpio. It's at home in Scorpio. Mars is at its detriment in Taurus. And this has been really hard for people that have either strong Mars or Aries or even Scorpio, that have wanted to just put that energy towards something and feel like if they're not doing something, they're not really empowering themselves. And Taurus is all about patience, and being in communion with what is, in order to resonate there rather than push anything beyond what is natural, right? The nature will find its way, and there's no reason you have to do anything but really embed yourself in that medium. And that's the best case scenario with Mars right now. And in fact, Uranus in the North Node, it's like, again, this fuse of dynamite that's like opening the ring of fire. And we're like, this is where we're going. And so, and you know where we've been by doing this. And so this is where that energy can really go at this third quarter moon. And in fact, you can see that it's in pretty much a T-square with the sun, right? And the sun is representing us as a human soul yearning for manifestation. We want to come forward. We want to feel the experience. It's a strong yearning, but it's for our own voice and not a yearning or a drive to create more energy necessarily with each other. That is something that is falling by the wayside because of the banking system. And we've been talking about this now for a while, like well over half the year, that this time frame leading up to this moment, especially while the nodes are in Taurus and Scorpio, will be all about the fall of the economic system, of course, with Pluto at the last stages of Capricorn, and Capricorn certainly being in one way the economy as a whole, how it holds all of us together economically. So we know that this is part of it. So it's okay to make investments or to establish a new mode of communication or a new pipeline into what kind of resources you're generating. But to also keep in mind that the money magic that has been at the root of everybody's economic system that's alive now, certainly, is is the past, right? And the best way here is to move forward to the future into what is inherently valuable, right? And you can plug in whatever you think is inherently valuable into that, right? Land, growing food, precious metals, source of water, right? Power, shelter. These are all things that are actually inherently valuable. And health, wellness, a sense of real like physical security and protection. These are all part of Taurus as well. So the sun in Leo, I think, because we're going to be yearning for it so much, but it's going to cause a lot of friction with where we've been and where we're going and how we actually translate that. So don't be afraid of that. This is why, allow the inundation, but also have discernment. And now Mercury is coming into Virgo at this point. So discernment is going to be so much more accessible to the consciousness of the individual coming into Virgo. All right, let's start organizing ourselves. Let's start putting things where they belong. Let's start putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And with the moon in Virgo right now, we feel already that internal kind of drive in some ways, or compulsion to organize ourselves emotionally. And Mercury at this point is going to be like, okay, this is how we're going to really do it with our actual resources. So, and of course, I talked about how it's going to be in conjunction with Draco on the day of the Lion's Gate on 8/8. So again, that's something to check into that transmission to get more of the read. And the moon will be at the galactic center at this moment, right? As the sun is crossing the midpoint, you can see that the sun trine to Jupiter, right? Venus in a trine to Neptune. That is just absolutely beautiful because it's in a conjunction with Procyon or Procyon in a trine, this beautiful water trine to Neptune. Again, it's the experience of fulfillment and the experience of containment and safety in a way that allows one to still grow and to learn and to be able to indulge oneself in the experiences and the lineage and the customs and the history of where we've come from, in a way that is very almost luxurious, right? That is like the benefit of having such a strong set of boundaries or a powerful family, unit, whatever Cancer means to you. And Venus, right into the material, into our relationships and material inherent value. So, and comfortability, like Venus likes to be comfortable, beautiful, harmony, asceticism, right? Balance. And she's going to be in this trine with Neptune retrograde. So yeah, the fog is cleared and it hasn't been easy, but this is going to establish that it's not about what the shell looks like. It's about how you feel within that shell. And Venus is going to put that right there and be like, oh, do I feel this way? Do I feel luxurious? Do I feel protected? Do I feel nurtured in this shell and supported? If so, then I know where I'm going in terms of this spiritual journey. Like I can just float downstream and it's okay. Other people are going to be like, oh, I don't know if I do feel okay in this shell. But again, here is this trine to Neptune that is like, you know what? Everybody's journey is different, including your own soul. So you get to make that decision at any given moment of, you know what, I'm going to go down a different path this time because I don't feel safe and secure here. So that is another powerful 8/8 activation. And of course, the moon is going to be square to that because the galactic center, boy, oh boy. So, that's just gorgeous. That's one thing that I didn't cover in totality in the Lionsgate transmission with Kiana. So that is a very powerful, and this is going to be on Monday, 8/8. There will be no Starseed ministry. I'll be out of town for a long weekend. So just know that there is this really it's just so it's just so sweet and almost juicy. It's kind of a weird feeling, but that's the best word I can come up with. That is going to be like you're going to feel full to the brim and your cup's going to be overflowing. Or if it's not, you're still going to be very, I think, valuing for yourself what that does feel like, and knowing that you can take a new direction in your soul's journey, and it's still going to bring you back. Still going to bring you back to yourself and to God. It's okay to do that. So the things that I want to bring up in particular moving forward are, well, we have a full moon in Aquarius, which I will go into way more detail when I do that transmission on Friday. And for the Aquarius people, that full moon forecast is going to be available for you by next week. But the thing that I want to really bring up in this transmission is, and especially as part of the Starseed ministry, that I've been seeing a lot in the readings, which is that this third quarter moon that is going to be the Pleiadian Atlantean story again, is been coming up as a pretty crucial time for people, especially those who are Pleiadian starseeds, of course. And I've seen it a lot in terms of this is going to be a good weekend to really kind of tap into what really needs to go, and honoring what has already been released at the Lionsgate. That seems to be even more potent to me, is to release this. Now you see here that the sun will be, again, these galactic degree for Atlantis, 27 degrees Leo. Venus will be in Aries by this point, okay? Mercury is getting into a position where it's going to be opposite Neptune right before it goes into its retrograde shadow. This is a really strong weekend on the 20th, in a good way. Again, I feel like it's going to be about honoring what has been released as part of the royal coat of arms that is coming through with Mercury and Virgo, right? That without leaving behind all of the baggage of where we have been, even taking the lessons with us, we still have to let it go so that we can actually move forward into the next challenge, into the next cycle, and truly be worthy of that coat of arms that we are starting to conceptualize with Mercury and Virgo. And when it comes into opposition with Neptune, boy, oh boy, right before it goes into its retrograde shadow, is kind of a reality check here. And one of those moments where, the flag at half-mast, right? And honoring, again, what has gone before and what it has taken within ourselves to get to this point. I think that if we can, and this is something that's not, is easier said than done, right? It takes a long time, I feel like, to get to this point, but we also have a lot of assistance in terms of the energetics all around us to kind of bring us to this point a lot more, without so many years of just like trudging through, which is that when we honor those situations in our lives that have taken us through the abyss of our own soul and our dark night and whatever it is, right? When we really honor that experience, and that is hard. That is hard when it is really deep and dark trauma that you've had to endure in different parts of your life, your past life. It's some of the hardest work we'll ever do is to bring ourselves to a place of acceptance and forgiveness, and honoring those experiences as part of our own growth, right? That's going to be part of this opposition with Mercury and Neptune before Neptune moves into its retrograde shadow. So this third quarter moon feels incredibly salient and important. And that weekend is going to be, it's gonna, I feel like that, especially because Lilith will be in its retrograde. It will have just crossed over Sirius before this happens. So I would just recommend to find a place within yourself, even though it'll be in a square to I'm ready to move forward, and really I see the exalting, this challenge, right? That the luminescence of like, let's go. Don't forget. And I would say with the Pleiadian star seeds, again, here comes this whole grief around Atlantis and what really needed to transpire, despite, I think, a real strong wanting to do something about it, wanting to save, for the planet from the destruction, right? Wanting to get humanity to a consciousness that would allow us to gracefully ride the bumps rather than to be completely devastated. And I think there's a lot of past life, multidimensional starseed grief around this that many people that I work with have Chiron at this point. So also just allow for that reorientation of your own consciousness, right? That we are moving forward. We're ready to cross the threshold. And in fact, we've already gone through it in many ways when we pass the Lion's Gate. It's just this moment of kind of reflection and internal connection to that which needs to be let go in order to peacefully adjust within ourselves. And this, again, these late degrees of Taurus, this is the Pleiades, and it's also the fixed star of Algol, which is the head of Medusa. And many times people with prominent astrological markings in this area tend to have incredible capacity for bereavement counseling, grief counseling, this connection that is very bittersweet in a lot of ways, because it is only through direct experience that many are able to be such powerful guides and healers and death doulas in a lot of ways, and be able to really hold space for grief as part of that process. So this just seems incredibly important, as I've stated. And the moon will be in a trine to Pluto, speaking of death and rebirth, right? And an Earth trine is a very stable Earth energy here. And so as Pluto is going through the process still of just, wiping out every pathway to full realization of our place within the world, it's part of, I think we can find some real balance and real security emotionally here to just let the grief move through us again. And it's okay, right? You can be in both places at once. And in fact, this square is going to be kind of one of those moments of laughing and crying, right? Of just like simultaneous. I think that's probably one of the best ways to manage this type of experience somehow, rather than shut yourself down. So when we move, I want to show you the Mercury opposition to Neptune before there. It's starting here, right, on the 21st. And this is where the sun is about to come into Virgo as well. So that's something to keep in mind, that Virgo season will start to really kick in, which is as the fruit ripens, essentially, during Virgo season. Patience again, a sense of labor and organization, meticulousness, purification, the getting into the practice of nourishing the fruit, right? The flower has bloomed and died in a lot of ways, and it's now the fruit that is getting all of the resources, which is coming through what? The root system, which is the Cancer energy. So you see how important all of this Cancer energy is to setting the stage for what is about to essentially come forward in a new social contract, which is truly what Libra represents. So this opposition, as I talked about, this is where we recognize, and through our own consciousness, publicly recognizing the aspects that enshrine a cultural hero, right? And perhaps there may be something very, a flag at half mast. We all know what that means. And there have also been times where prominent Virgo astrological transits have hit this North Node. And there has been a public servant that has passed away. One of the ones that I remember in the last 2 years that was pretty significant was Ruth Bader Ginsburg at a very strong 24 to 25 degree Virgo transit. I can't remember exactly, but it was near I think it was near the equinox last year or the year before. But either way, what it shows here is that there is an individual awareness in this moment of what it takes, right, to really fulfill that type of identity for as a person, right, to be of service to not only yourself but with the intention of giving that service, committing yourself to some sort of relationship, social contract, which is Libra, to fairness and balance and equilibrium. The opposition to Neptune is as the society goes through this incredible cleanse and purging, and as we go through a karmic cleanse and purging that is nothing short of just like profound catharsis of all the religious institutions, all of the corrupt practices, all of the perversions just coming through like the flood and just, wiping everything absolutely clean. And it's going to be our own mind of like, okay, we have to keep ourselves together as we acknowledge this moment at a much broader humanitarian or spiritual level. This is as the moon or the sun comes into, as our sun comes into the sign of Virgo, and then Mercury right after that is in, again, another trine to Earth trine, I'm so sorry, Earth trine to Pluto again. And this is an interesting segue into what I wanted to address just before we get into the reading that I want to share with you today. And then that'll be really how we wrap up this transmission in our Starseed ministry for Monday, August 1st, which is that this trine to Pluto here, these late degrees of Mercury, really identify a serious seizing of power and control in a moment that needs it, right? It's like when the time comes, the personality that has been conditioned through the Virgo or sixth house energy, which is through sacrifice, which is through commitment to yourself, which is through a healing process, or going through the motions of establishing a firm sense of utilizing your resources. When the time comes, there's a personality there that just grabs control and really initiates like a catabolic response in a lot of ways. It's like the contractions in some ways. And so again, a trine with Pluto over here in Capricorn again is showing us where in our own conception and our own organization, our own meticulous focus on how we are using what we have, as the establishment that is already there is going through this deep elimination phase. And again, our own minds, being able to be discerning, to be able to be in control of ourselves, right? As this is happening, this is all part of how we manage the experience of that total tower moment that's just been drawn out for months and months now. So that's also going to be really important. And then we have a new moon in Virgo actually on the 27th. So we'll talk more about that as we get closer to that time. But I really just wanted to share that all with you. So the one thing that I did want to bring up, and I'm going to bring up right now the reading so you can start to kind of look at it and get a sense of what it's all about here, is so right now the moon is in Virgo, and it's going to finish its transit of Virgo today and move into Libra pretty much like at midnight Eastern Standard Time, like for Tuesday the 2nd. So this 28 degrees, like I talked about with that Mercury trine to Pluto, this 28 degrees of Virgo, the Sabian symbol is a bald-headed man who seizes power. Now, at the spring equinox this year, right, 2022, in March, I was the full moon in Virgo, and that was the degree that the full moon in Virgo was at, which means that the sun was at the last degrees of Pisces. So the full moon is in Virgo at that degree, and that is the day I actually posted on social media. There was a big press, event where Vladimir Putin, and Xi Jinping from China had a big press related event where they were making crepes together and they were establishing some sort of friendly relationship. And so we see the moon crossing over that point again today, making a trine to Pluto, right? It's not doing anything. It's not a full moon. It's not this massive, and it's in its waxing period, but it's still pretty, it's still in its thumbnail essentially. We still just had our new moon, but I thought it was interesting that this is where the news cycle is really pumping up the fact that Nancy Pelosi is going to Asia and going to Taiwan, and how there's been a lot of cage rattling around that. Regardless if it's real, it's all acting. I just think it's interesting that that's as the moon crosses that point again today, and I wonder how. That bald-headed man that seizes power, Vladimir Putin, I'm curious to see how that comes into the picture with China. And I just thought that was interesting, especially because we're coming up to 0 degrees Libra, with not only the fall equinox, or the September equinox, I should say, but it is conjunct Mercury at 0 degrees Libra in its retrograde. That means Mercury's going to cross over this point by September, right? By the end of August into September. So I think that's very interesting to keep an eye on, right? To put a pin in that right now. It's subtle, right? You may feel it, but you don't get the full illumination right this moment. But I think there's something interesting there. So here's our reading for today, my friends. And before that, I kind of want to check out the stream and just make sure it's healthy and that people are, yes, good. So here's our reading for today, my friends. And ultimately, I feel like there's been big breakthroughs. There's been, we're kind of coming to this moment of, again, with the moon in Virgo, a sense of gain and satisfaction with our 9 of discs, which I will bring up here to start with. But because the 9 of discs is Venus in Virgo, right? The second decan of Virgo, which is 10 to 20 degrees. So the moon is kind of moving through here right now. But this is much more about the very palpable experience of pulling in that which we are gathering in our crops, I guess I should say, right? And there's a successful healing after illness or injury. There's wealth, there's well-being, there's material happiness, right? There's a sense of comfortable satisfaction with Venus in Virgo. And the gathering in, remember that the Venus quality of magnetism, right? Gathering it in, pulling in, receiving in many ways. And there is some work that has to happen, but it's about pulling in and gathering in that which we have gained through our own labors. That's what Virgo truly represents, our own work. This is our causal factor here. So there's a measure of gain and settling in and gathering in. Now, just because it's upright doesn't mean that we like what we are gathering in, but Venus wants to be comfortable. So it just depends on where our comfort level is that this will be something that we actually want to gather in or not. But I do get the sense that there is this moment of okay, pulling everything in that we have worked for, leading to this moment. And maybe this is also a trigger in some ways, a reminder, kind of like a nudge, hey, pull in everything that you have, again, what you have gathered in, the fruits of your labors, what's valuable, right? To pull it in and to settle into it, into some comfortability. So this is our causal factor, because where things seem to go and where the heart is in a place that is Mercury ruled, right? The Eight of Wands is Mercury in Sag. And so the idea here is that just in general, there's a swiftness, sudden realization, quick brain waves, right? But this is in its reversal. So I get the sense here that there is some resistance to these sudden realizations. Perhaps there's a rushing into things without the proper consideration, people being rash, people being rapacious, right? They want more than they can actually have, and so they're going for even more. There's a thoughtlessness when this is reversed here about the impact on understanding with our own actions, right? And so we can also waste too much time on the details instead of like moving quickly. And that's something that came up through Kiana yesterday in the Lionsgate transmission, is that it's so important that we are finding our sensitivity in our stillness, so that when it is time to act, that we are just in the flow of it, right? Just following the lightning bolt of that sudden Uranian energy, and being very mercurial about it in terms of just riding the light wave, right? Riding the photon wave, rather than trying to use your own ego mind to establish something that is not going to come from there. It's going to come from the collective consciousness, to the lightning bolt of inspiration, right? That is not us creating it. Our job here, it seems like, and it will be difficult, is being able to move quick enough, right? So there's something off here, and the swiftness may be something at the heart here. It may be something that is more of a defense mechanism because we are struggling with what it is that this understanding is presenting to us, the Sagittarian energy. And again, here's this rainbow, which is coming up so much in the Leo energy with the last degrees of Leo, right? And the rainbow, all of, in a biblical sense, for instance, we're going to look at is the covenant between Noah and God, right? Never again will I use my destructive energies to, to destroy life on earth. That is the covenant. Whether or not, who knows what that means, right? Was that the last very large deluge? Some people, there's a whole body of work and research and interest in the mud flood of the 19th century. So who knows? The idea here, though, is that this represents the link between ourselves and source, right? And the mercurial energy is about riding the logos, or the light wave, rather than attempting to do this ourselves. The fact that it's reversed, again, all those types of resistances to it, or really rash decision making, is right here at the heart. And again, there's that magnetism around our heart space as the result of an electrical pump, right, that creates a magnetic field around us. So the other thing, too, if you really just look at the imagery in and of itself without deconstructing it, the only thing that's truly different is that it's a bowl, right? It's a bowl that is underneath. And if that's not a Cancerian issue, if that's not a Cancerian type of symbol, I don't know what is. So again, considering that the stillness, right? Being in the stillness, being held by the covenant with your higher self, and with the Akashic Library here at the root, I'd say that is really relevant. But being held here, so when it's time to shoot out in whatever direction we individually choose to go, or in all directions, right? We will be coming from a place of core stabilization within our connection to the infinite, right? And that's a real strong message from the Syrians, and Syrian starseeds really have a very ability to tap into this very almost seamlessly, right? It's part of your innate frequency. So the Akashic Library here at the root system really suggests that you may not be fully aware of it in your mind right now. I think what most of us are aware of is this Two of Forces and the willow being knocked around all over. But this Akashic Library, even if you're not even fully aware of it, it's already happened. This new initiation is already at the root system here for us. Better understanding of old motives and new purpose. And again, this is something you may have to tap into through that root system, or that quiet, or those whispers of your guidance, or just in your knowing. And because this is where heightened intuition comes from, and greater self-creation. This is really leading to a place of accessing your imagination to truly create the reality we all want to be in. And so the breadth of the landscape before you, came out of the book directly for the Akashic Tarot. The breadth of the landscape before you rests solely on the scope of your imagination, right? It's only in... It's truly, not only, but I guess you could say that, but truly it's in the scope of what you can imagine for yourself, right? And the breakthroughs around this, like I said, all weekend have been just mind-blowing. Even knowing that this is the potential being structured in the cosmos right now through at least my astrological reading. It's another thing entirely to be witness to it on multiple levels as that realization becomes a reality for people, right? That they are only as limited as their own imagination, and the thought processes that have been pretty much embedded into our current consciousness now, right? And so there is work to be done around this, but it's already established. That's pretty clear so far with this Akashic Library here at the root. We are more aware of the fact that we're getting banged around by the elements with the willow in its retrograde. The winds of conflict are blowing all around us, right? So it's important that we bend and not break. And how do we stay flexible, supple, like this willow, right? To move with the flow of spirit or the wind without being broken. And it may appear we're being totally this total upheaval, but really it's only if you're completely uprooted by the storm itself that you will be impacted. So the willow is strong and capable of bending without breaking. And so sometimes that may mean that you do have to kind of get up and go somewhere else. But that doesn't mean you as yourself and your connection to your community, to yourself, to God, whatever, that doesn't mean that has been broken at all. This is something that individually we'll have to come to on our own, what it means to bend, what it means to break, and what it means to be rooted. And does that mean you're rooted physically where you are? Stay centered yet adaptable, right, within the circumstances around you. And again, this is where you're going to hear the whispers through the wind, right? When you can allow it to move through the branches of your own neural pathways in your mind, right? Because there is some interference on its way. That is pretty, I never brought it up. The Eight of Swords. Oh, well, you can kind of see here, and I can explain it to you. The Eight of Swords is Jupiter in Gemini, the first decan, and interference is the main word here. And as you can see, it is two swords that are in the same longitudinal direction. So when it's upright, it is facing down, and in this reversal, the points, right, the tip is facing up, and the hilt and the handle are down. But there are all these differently shaped swords in the background behind these two very strong, very balanced in terms of their position swords, right? So when it talks about interference, you're talking about restlessness, right? Now, Jupiter in Gemini is in its detriment. So when you're expanding ideas infinitely rather than patterns of meaning to put all these ideas together, endless analyzing, right? Restlessness of mind. And, imagine being an Aquarius rising person, and Uranus and the North Node and Mars are in your third house, or if you are a fourth house, but also too if you're a Capricorn person, when it's all in your a Pisces. If you're a Pisces person, this is all happening in your third house. Oh my. Which is just, Taurus is very interesting. So, we can look at that. The idea here is, and this is a function of me not being able to, not having some sort of like dyslexia or getting confused in terms of which way things are rotating. So I'm actually going to look real quick because it really bothers me that I want to make sure I don't misspeak about this. So yes, Pisces people, if you're a Pisces rising person, then we know that this Mars, Uranus, North Node, right? The disruption is in your third house. Now, talk about restlessness of mind. Pisces rising people have probably been feeling this restlessness for quite a while now. So, when this is upright, definitely some restlessness. But also in its reversal, it really does suggest here that there is aimless pondering, compulsive brooding, and a lot of confusion. The best case scenario for this energy when it's upright is that you become aware of causality, like you reach your limitation of the dialectic operating in your mind, and you give yourself a cutoff point, right? You're like, oh, I see how this all feeds into each other. This reversal and the fact that it's also the Eight of Swords and the Eight of Wands, both either Mercury ruled or in the sign of Gemini, does suggest that there is going to be some outer interference, right? Or an interference or a restlessness or certainly some rash decisions that might be coming that are going to really lead people into a lot of confusion, okay? And even with this axis of power, where we know at some deeply intuitive level here that we have already descended into our own Akash, and we're becoming very aware of that story. We're still getting kind of blown around by the conflict, and that I think is where, if we leave it right there, that the confusion will still be present because we've gained so much already, and now all of a sudden it's just like, okay, well, now the tables are turning, or now the fuses have been lit, or oh, there is this space here that was never here before. So that's something to consider. So look at the guidance surrounding this whole thing. The Two of Roses, right? So we have the Two of Forces, which is the Willow, but the Two of Forces is the emotional conflict within our own hearts, right? And the guide surrounding this, and coupled with the blue heron, which is another bird, right? You can see there's a lot of birds in this imagery. The dove, the hawk that's carrying a message, the dove that's carrying a message, the blue heron, which is a bird that is very much got its feet standing in the water. So much of the conflict, the drama, the conflict in your own heart has been part of the journey into your own Akash. And when you have the blue heron and it's suggesting here about standing up for yourself, there's a call here to see the drama through the lens of your compassion and your wisdom. And the best way to do that is to trust your deepest knowing that your most fulfilling support is going to come from within you, and you don't need to rely on others to tell you what to do or how to act. It's in the conflict and your experience of it that is allowing you to tap into where your support actually comes from and how you make decisions about moving forward with new creations and letting go of your past. But how would you ever come to trust yourself without this conflict? Again, this is where we find ourselves honoring those situations that will become so much more salient by mid-August with that third quarter moon. It's going to be a very powerful experience, I feel like. So we're already getting kind of like set up for it. And this Lionsgate is giving us a chance to let go of everything that's not going to be able to withstand the floodwaters, right? I mean, it's best to get rid of it now rather than having, and some people will be swept away. That's just all there is to it. That's their journey. Now, when it comes to the Willow, right, the unicorn, this is the challenge to really tap into our imagination, right? It's really, the breadth of our landscape is only limited by our imagination, and so indulge your creativity, indulge your imagination, right? How is it that you are able to utilize the winds of the storm around you to be able to tap into the whispers, to the lessons, to the wisdom of the storm moving through your branches, right? And just flushing things out in some ways, right? And also too, with that imagination and that creativity, the King of Roses, right? I mean, this is all about balancing that passion and a sense of tenderness and thoughtful support. So somebody in your life, or finding this person within yourself, really stepping into the role as like a thoughtful, tender, nurturing masculine. So this is someone who stands up for themselves with an open heart and compassion and creates a happy container or a happy home. But that happy home is also part of maintaining healthy boundaries for yourself. And without that, then how do you indulge your own creativity if you have to be in survival mode all the time about what is blowing you around? And we are all up leveling right now. And so the difficulties that are being experienced in either the Two of Roses, right? Or even in the heart of it, which is this swift, sudden shift of realization here, they're all opportunities to establish where our power comes from and how to make the most out of situations that seem to be absolutely devastating or draining us, when really it's the lightning bolt in some ways that rebalances the charge of the atmosphere, and that's truly what lightning is. So, but when it comes to indulging your imagination and creativity, it's like, know where your boundaries are, know what is holding you in place in your foundation, which is your root system, and that will allow for a much more tender and almost vulnerable experience in that masculine set of stability, right? And then you can indulge your creativity and your imagination so that you're not getting caught up in the confusion as you feel really like a very drastic shift in the frequency of the magnetism that is emitting from all of us, right? And that's a Leo energy all day, in terms of the sun is what creates its own magnetic field, of course, right? And when it gets bunched up, that's when we have solar flares. So lots of ways that we can align with and identify ourselves with all of these like natural processes, and they are no different than the natural processes within us. So my friends, I think that's going to be plenty for today. I know that there's a lot of content out there. There's a lot of potency. There is a lot of intensity, and it's a lot of beauty, right? And there's a lot of potential for joy out there. And, it's when we find ourselves capable of accessing that truly, when we are really at our darkest moments, that is going to be like the flash of inspiration. So remember that it is your covenant with your higher self, and how you identify as sacred or divine or the Great Spirit that is holding all of us as we go through this transition. And maybe something very sudden changes that we need to also change with, right? But again, realizing that it's those challenges that have allowed us to go deeper into who we are and establish that foundation, knowing that we're so much more than even the experiences that we are feeling even right now. It's not that they're not important, it's the experience that is allowing our soul to grow, and that's where we truly are, is in that soul experience coming through this material earth school. It is not for the faint of heart, my friends, and that is true on so many levels. So I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Just to remind people, if they're interested in the lunar transit reading as well, and you are a Leo or Aquarius rising sun or moon, this sale is available to you. Again, 60-minute recording is $66 US. I know that the US dollar is tanking like a mofo right now. I'm doing my best to be as flexible with my time, and with that reality as I can. So 30 minutes is $33. And that's a great opportunity to check in with, like, from one half or the other, or just get a much more concentrated read on what to expect for your lunar cycle as a Leo Aquarius person. And we have an Aquarius full moon coming on the 11th of August. So great time to get booked with this as well. And that's at my website. You can follow the link in the description box. I will have information for the next month's Catalyst Classroom theme and getting content out as soon as possible. I honestly feel like that maybe we all need a little bit of a break moving into the Lion's Gate. So we'll get right back on track with that next week after the Lion's Gate. We're going to be talking about Chiron and Tau Ceti all month. And so the Starseed Fellowship, though, if people are interested and you are subscribed to that tier and you think that a space this week for fellowship would be really valuable, let me know either in our private Telegram group. You can send a message through Subscribestar. You can send me an email. Let me know what you think. You can comment on this video. And I will schedule something that we can all come together with if you feel like it would be beneficial. If not, we can get back on track with all of that stuff starting next week after the Eye of the Needle, right? I mean, I feel like we really have so much healing and clearing away and purification that we all could really stand to do, that I don't want to overload any of us with any responsibility, but I do feel like a space for people to share and support each other is definitely a possibility if people want it. So let me know. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much. I look forward to our next interaction. I'll see you on Friday for the Catalyst Astrology Report. We're going to look at the full moon in Aquarius and kind of get an idea for the week ahead and check in about everything. So until then, you guys have a great week. Take very good care of yourselves right now. Don't forget to find space in your life for stillness and receiving and just some quiet, right? Just whatever you can do to do it. And let me know if you need anything. My email's in the description box, and I'm happy to answer questions and give guidance on some things. So take care, guys. I love you. I'll see you when I see you. Bye.